For centuries, scientists believed the Amazon was a green desert. The soil was too poor, the jungle too hostile, the environment too brutal to support complex civilization. Small tribes, maybe. A few scattered villages along the rivers? Sure, but nothing that could be called a metropolis. The Amazon, we were taught, was a pristine wilderness that humans barely touched. Then, in January 2024, LiDAR scans stripped away the forest canopy in Ecuador and revealed something hiding 30 feet beneath the trees. Not a village, not a campsite, a vast urban network of 15 interconnected cities, 6,000 residential platforms, wide straight roads running for 12 miles, sophisticated drainage systems, agricultural terraces covering 300 square kilometers. At its peak, between 10,000 and 30,000 people lived there, a population comparable to Roman-era London, and it is 2,500 years old. This makes it the oldest and largest urban complex ever found in the Amazon. This is not a story about discovering a lost city. This is a story about discovering that we had no idea what the Amazon actually was. The mystery began in 1996. French archaeologist Steven Rostaing was excavating in Ecuador's Upano Valley, right where the Andes Mountains crash into the Amazon rainforest. Walking through the dense undergrowth, he noticed earthen mounds scattered across the jungle floor, hundreds of them. They were clearly man-made. He dug into a few and found pottery decorated with incised lines, large jugs that once held chicha, and clear evidence that these mounds had been deliberately constructed as foundations for buildings. Rostaing knew he was looking at something significant, but the jungle is deceptive. Walking through vegetation where visibility is measured in feet, he could not see how it all fit together. He could see the trees, but he could not see the civilization. He later said that they had a lot of mounds and a lot of structures, but he did not have a complete overview. For 25 years, he kept digging. He excavated large sites. He found radiocarbon dates showing occupation from around 500 BC to 600 AD, meaning this culture was thriving at the exact same time as the Roman Empire in Europe. But the jungle kept its secrets. The mounds were separated by thick vegetation. The roads were buried. The true scale remained hidden. In 2015, everything changed. The Ecuadorian government funded a LiDAR survey of the valley. LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, uses planes equipped with laser sensors that fire billions of pulses through the forest canopy. By measuring how long it takes the light to bounce back from the ground, computers can digitally erase the trees, revealing the original landscape as it existed thousands of years ago. When Rostaing and his team finally analyzed the data in 2024, they were stunned. He later said that each day felt like Christmas. What he had thought were hundreds of isolated mounds turned out to be thousands of platforms organized into a massive, cohesive machine. The LiDAR revealed 15 distinct settlements spread across the valley, 5 large urban centers and 10 smaller communities. These were not random clusters of huts. They were planned. Each settlement featured clusters of rectangular earthen platforms, 66 feet long by 33 feet wide, arranged around central plazas and distributed along wide, straight streets. Unlike the Incas or Maya who built with stone, the people of the Upano Valley had no access to rock deep in the Amazon, so they engineered an entire civilization out of mud. But the smoking gun was the road system. The largest roads were 33 feet wide and ran for 6 to 12 miles, connecting the cities to one another with geometric precision. These were not winding paths following natural contours. They were highways. They were deliberately constructed to cross at right angles, demonstrating a level of central planning and engineering that should not exist in the green desert. And between the cities, not wild jungle, but gardens. The scans showed rectangular agricultural fields interspersed with drainage canals to manage the massive amounts of rainfall. On the hillsides, terraced gardens climbed the slopes, growing corn, manioc, and sweet potatoes. This was not a society battling the jungle to survive. This was garden urbanism, an entirely human-engineered landscape where cities and managed forests live together. The scale is staggering. Researchers identified more than 6,000 earthen platforms. To put that in perspective, for decades, archaeologists were told not to bother looking for cities in the Amazon. The prevailing scientific consensus, known as the counterfeit paradise theory, claimed that the acidic, nutrient-poor soil made large-scale agriculture impossible. The assumption, often rooted in colonial prejudice, was that Amazonian peoples were savages, incapable of building anything sophisticated. Stephen Rostaing faced this bias directly. When he started fieldwork in French Guiana in the 1980s, he found similar mounds. He said no one believed that indigenous people had made these. He was discouraged from working in the Amazon because mainstream archaeology insisted there was nothing there to find. The Upano discovery demolishes that myth. These were not primitive people hiding in the trees. They were urban planners, engineers, and agricultural innovators who transformed an entire valley into a managed landscape. And they did it 2,500 years ago, more than a millennium before any other known Amazonian civilization. The sites were occupied for roughly 1,000 years before being abandoned. Why did they leave? Rostaing theorizes it may be linked to eruptions from the nearby Sangay volcano, one of the most active in Ecuador, or perhaps climate shifts. Whatever the cause, the people left. And for 1,400 years, the forest grew over the platforms, the roads, and the plazas. But the Upano Valley isn't alone. Across the Amazon, LiDAR is rewriting history. In Bolivia's Llanos de Mojos, researchers found raised agricultural fields and canals, managing floodplains for tens of thousands of people. In Brazil, deforestation revealed over 450 geometric earthworks, called geoglyphs, massive ditched enclosures arranged in perfect circles and squares, covering 13,000 square kilometers. We have surveyed less than 1% of the Amazon with LiDAR. 99% remains unmapped. Researchers estimate there may be up to 24,000 undiscovered earthworks still hidden beneath the forest. The evidence is not just in the structures, it is in the dirt itself. Scattered throughout the Amazon are patches of Terra preta, also known as black earth. This is super fertile soil created by ancient peoples mixing charcoal, bone, compost, and pottery shards into the naturally poor Amazonian dirt. This was not nature, this was geoengineering. Indigenous people created soil that is still fertile 2,000 years later, allowing them to farm at an industrial scale. This completely changes our understanding of pre-Columbian South America. We now know that millions of people lived in the Amazon before European contact. They built cities, they engineered soil, they managed forests through selective planting, they created trade networks that stretched from the Andes to the Atlantic coast. So, why did early explorers see the pristine wilderness? Because by the time scientists started studying the Amazon, the people were gone. When Europeans arrived in the 16th century, they brought diseases like smallpox and measles. These pathogens raced ahead of the explorers, moving along trade routes, killing an estimated 90% of the indigenous population within a century. Survivors abandoned the cities. The jungle reclaimed the fields. The roads disappeared under the canopy. What looks like untouched jungle today is actually a post-apocalyptic landscape. Nature reclaimed a civilization that disease destroyed. Rostaing says it changes the paradigm. Most people picture small groups living in huts and clearing land. This shows that ancient people lived in complicated urban societies. But for indigenous leaders, this is not a discovery, it is a validation. Manari Ushigwa, a leader from the Sapara nation, told researchers that they have had stories about ancient cities for centuries. The knowledge was never lost. Scientists were not listening. The Upano Valley cities, with their 12-mile roads, terraced gardens, and 6,000 residential platforms, are physical proof of what oral history always claimed. The Amazon was never a green desert, it was a metropolis. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how LiDAR is rewriting history, make sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next discovery. This is Strata Files.